Phil for the 9 a.m. time slot. After that reception last night, hopefully everyone's here. Okay, good. It's great to be back in Wisconsin, and thanks for making me an honorary citizen, I think, because I've been here so many times in the last few months, but I love it, and I want to thank Phil, of course, for the introduction. And I know it's really annoying when people start their speeches by all these thank yous, like, I'd like to thank so-and-so, and I'd like to thank so-and-so, but I really would like to thank Phil and Stephanie for their leadership, the team they've built here in Wisconsin, the work you've done to bring people together, and Phil's like not even paying attention to me while I'm here. But the leadership that you have brought and what you've built here has been truly amazing, and I do not say that in every state. So I just want to say thank you to both of you. And yeah, let's give them a hand. And we are here in the shadow of the state capitol. So I will thank Kevin. Kevin, are you here somewhere as well? Probably somewhere, for his work with the CLC here in Madison. But it is hard not to think about what has gone on in this state over the last 6 years, right? When you look at that Capitol and you think back to 2011, and I know many of you in this room were braving those frigid temperatures, and people talk about it all the time, but I think it's worth mentioning every time I come here, just because we in D.C. were in awe of what you did, and I saw it myself too. I came, like a lot of other folks from D.C., and when I landed, Phil was like, you want to see what's going on up there? I said, absolutely. And he started walking the wrong direction in the circle, and I said, wait a second, we're going the wrong way. And he said, no, this is the best way to see everything, and the crowds just parted as Phil walked. So, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? But really, in the face of long odds, and unlimited outside money, you stood strong. You stood strong. And I wouldn't call it a protest, I would call it an uprising, and I think that's what you call it too. An uprising, right? And the solidarity has started to pay off. And think about what you've accomplished and what we have accomplished as a labor movement together. Okay, I'm going to tick through what we've accomplished, okay? And listen up, because it's some good stuff, right? We re-elected President Obama and Vice President Biden. We mobilized to elect Tammy Baldwin, the first openly LGBT U.S. Senator in United States history. We elected Mark Pocan to replace her, who is a proud IUPAT member, right? And with their help, we are stopping the unfair job-killing Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's right. Scott Walker's presidential campaign was over before it started. And in 70 days, we are going to defeat Donald Trump and elect Hillary Clinton for President of the United States. That she has a Democratic Senate, a pro-worker Supreme Court, by sending Russ Feingold back to Washington and Ron Johnson back to Oshkosh. Pretty impressive list of accomplishments in the last few years, don't you think? Pretty good. All right, we'll take it. So, like many of you in this room, I grew up in a union family. I made my way through the IBW, as Phil said. But my dad was a lineman. IBW, thank you very much. My dad was a lineman at a small utility company in Portland, Oregon. But really his story, I think, captures the American dream. And we talk often about how the American dream is starting to slip, right? And he and his 4 siblings actually grew up in a very small town, and were working in the orchards, living in a one-room cabin. And I think back to what he went through and his upbringing and how he made his way to finding a union job, right? And here I stand before you as the product of that American dream. He actually sandblasted tombstones at the age of 12 to make money for his own dental care. Can you imagine? And some of you might be able to imagine that. He enlisted in the Marine Corps after high school. All right, we got some Marines, some folks who have served. And after he graduated and joined the Marine Corps, he went right to Vietnam. And when he returned, like many veterans, needed a job, right? And he got lucky. He was hired at the same utility company I worked at, Portland General Electric. It was a family operation back then. And through hard work as a hole digger, earned a spot in the lineman's apprenticeship with the union. And that was the turning point for him and for our family. And he had access to a family-sustaining job, right? And I worked through that at that utility company, the same utility company that he did, and my mother did. And clerical workers weren't in the union when I was there. And I noticed that the company treated folks a little differently, right? When you weren't in the union, you didn't have that measure of respect. You couldn't speak your mind like the folks in the line department could. And that really stayed with me. So after I graduated from college, I was working several part-time jobs, the gig economy as they call it today, because there weren't really full-time jobs available. And my mother was still working as a clerical worker, and they were trying to organize a union for the clerical workers. And so I ended up going back to work on that organizing campaign with those same women that I worked side by side with. To fight for a voice on the job. And it became apparent pretty quickly that the linemen in the local weren't the best door knockers and house callers for these women, clerical workers. And so I signed up to talk to them myself. And my mom and I were the dynamic duo. We were house calling together. And each conversation that we had was a window into the hopes and dreams of these women who wanted to join the union and come together for a stronger and better life. That is what we fight for, right? So it's in my blood, it's who I am, I think it's who you are, and why you do the work you do every day. And so I want to say thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. And let's give yourselves a hand, right? After that campaign, and that's why I'm here today. And in fact, I just got back from Oregon, my home state, and I was able to spend some quality time with my father, and it reminded me, and that's why I'm kind of emotional, actually, thinking about all that the union has provided for our family. And it really is the pathway to the middle class. And it is the American dream. And that is what is at stake in this election, folks. And my parents were able to put a roof on our head and food on the table. And really, they weren't asking for the world. They were asking for a decent life for their kids and to raise their family, pay the bills, save for college for their kids, right? Or trade school, own a home, buy a car, have a little left over for retirement. It is not asking for much. And that is the American dream. That's security. And unfortunately, the ladder of opportunity that was available to my family and many of your families is fast disappearing, isn't it? Wages aren't keeping up with productivity. Outdated labor laws are making it harder and harder to form a union. Young people are graduating from college with mountains of debt. I think it's on average $30,000 that students are graduating with today. Women are still being paid less than men for doing the same job. In 2016, people, I saw a great ad that Russ Feingold was running this morning on TV with some young soccer players, girls. And he's like, is that right? And so he's inspiring young people and women in this election. And globalization continues to squeeze our communities and push jobs overseas. So folks, the rules of the economy are broken. Not by chance, doesn't just it's by choice. The choices we make and the choices politicians are making. And they have been manipulated. these politicians, by billionaires like Donald Trump and the Koch brothers. And we've seen it here with Act 10. We've seen it with voter ID, right to work, the list goes on and on, right? We've seen it. And we felt it across the country. It's not happening just in Wisconsin. We felt it through bad trade deals and corporate tax giveaways and Wall Street run amok. But folks, something is changing. That's the good news, is working people are demanding better. And the uprising in Madison was followed by a citizen's veto in Ohio. And then there were Moral Mondays in North Carolina. And minimum wage increases all over the country from California to Arkansas. And more workers have gone to the bargaining table in the last 2 years than at any point in recent memory and gotten better contracts and made gains. And young people are calling attention to the student debt crisis, and activists are demanding fair immigration systems, and working women are standing up for equal pay and an equal say. So that is the good news. Working people are fighting back, right? And you inspired it. You inspired it. So a federal judge gutted Scott Walker's voter suppression law. UAW members in Sheboygan took on Kohler and won. The Wisconsin Regional Training Partnership is training the next generation of industrial manufacturing apprentices, and your right to work readiness program is keeping our membership strong and united. And just last week, the National Labor Relations Board ruled that teaching assistants have the right to form a union. 50 years after the very first organizing campaign at the University of Wisconsin. Again, the bright spot. And often we think and dwell on all the negative things that are going on, right? But that's a hell of a lot of things to look forward to and to be optimistic about. And you all, I'm going to call you my working class heroes, just like the song. Any Beatles fans in the room? Okay. All right. Women and men in this room and all over the country have kept the TPP at bay. Everyone in Washington thought that was a done deal, a slam dunk. But thank you. I see your sign over there. But the Democratic primary also helped us with this. We had Hillary and Bernie both waging that primary on our terms in the trade debate, with our issues front and center, and the party platform that passed at the Democratic Convention reflected our vision and our values. And it was the most progressive Democratic platform in history. So thank you for that, for waging that fight. And we are about to embark, and already are in motion, in the labor movement. We are in the midst of the most sophisticated and far-reaching ground game in American history. And that's the labor-to-labor program, and then the labor-to, what are we calling it now? Neighbor or blended program. And you're going to be out canvassing later today, which is fantastic, because if I look in this room and everybody's out there on those doors this afternoon, it's going to make a big impact. So sisters and brothers, the point is, what you started in Wisconsin has become a national movement for justice. A national movement for justice. And it shows that we can change the economic rules and make real progress for working people. And chances like this come along maybe once in a generation, twice in a generation. So we have to seize this opportunity and this moment and build on that momentum and on to victory. So I know Stephanie will agree, this is an especially important time for working women. And I'm going to spend a moment talking about working women, because all the numbers show that women are actually the key demographic to winning this election. And we know today that women are serving as doctors and lawyers and soldiers and astronauts and labor leaders. Look at us, okay? So, and look at all of you in this room. Police chiefs, electricians, jobs that were once exclusively reserved for men. And a recent professional football game included a woman owner, a woman coach, and a woman referee. All in one place. When does that happen, right? And speaking of contact sports, a woman is going to be leading the free world in January of 2017. That's right. No one can deny that progress has been made. But even as we celebrate the advancement of women in work, the harsh reality is that too many of us struggle when we shouldn't have to. And just getting by actually takes an act of heroism. And there's this catchy phrase going around, I think it was Sheryl Sandberg wrote a book, right? Asking women to lean in. But most women are already leaning in so hard they're falling over. And we're being asked and forced to just hang on and scrape by and make do. But as usual, working women are rising to the occasion. And we understand that our growing role in the workforce carries with it new responsibilities. Financial responsibilities, for example, as heads of households. I think it's 40% now are primary breadwinners in their families. And decision-making responsibilities in our homes, in our communities, in our jobs. And, of course, we embrace these responsibilities as part of making progress. But what we don't accept, what we have to stop accepting, is the price that society demands from us in return. And that is little to no say over how we spend our time. Our time is being consumed by day-to-day responsibilities that add up and overwhelm us. And earlier this year, we did a survey at the AFL-CIO. 25,000 working women to find out the picture of their lives, the whole person, not just their union activism. And we found out that half of the respondents in this survey spend less than 4 hours a week on themselves. That's about 30 minutes a day on themselves. And what does that mean? Exercising, reading something, right? That's not a lot of time. Some women are saying, oh my gosh, I don't even get 30 minutes, right? And corporate policies and our government policies are not helping us. Corporate policies are making schedules less predictable, so people don't even know when they're going to work. They're less flexible, they're less fair. In many cities, daycare now costs more than public college tuition. Think about that. And more than 40% of private sector workers have no access to paid sick days. We forget that because we all have, for the most part, with a few exceptions, most people have paid sick days. If you're sick, you don't have to choose between your job and taking care of you and your family. And since caregiving for kids and families is still disproportionately falling on women, if you don't have family leave or you don't have sick time, you're sunk, right? So let's face it. For far too long, society has quietly accepted these demands on women as inevitable. Well, they're not. They're not. And we have to make quiet acceptance the enemy. We have the power to speak out and make change. And speak out for good wages and great benefits and fair scheduling and equal pay for equal work. Are there any women in the audience? When I say equal pay for equal work, you're supposed to clap. And actually the men should be clapping too because they are related. All right. So it's not just a women's issue, right? I said it's 40% of breadwinners in this country are women, and that hurts families when you're not being paid equally. So we can win paid sick leave and paid family leave and quality child care and show that these are priorities for the labor movement because they are wage issues. They're key economic issues. And we can finally put a woman in the White House who actually has these issues as a core part of her platform for president. So it's a very exciting time. And I was there in Philadelphia when Hillary accepted the nomination. Anybody else there? All right, a few of you. It was a pretty spectacular moment, and of course when she took the stage, there wasn't a dry eye in the room because history was being made. And I was thinking back, of course, to all the women who made this possible and have struggled to see a woman take the mantle of the party. And you think back to Shirley Chisholm, the first African-American woman elected to Congress. You think about Mother Jones, right? Who her picture hangs in my office because she was such an inspiration. And the extraordinary women that I meet every single day that are out there working on the job, sometimes out in front, sometimes behind the scenes, right? Making this country great. And so Hillary Clinton is the right candidate. This is the right time. She understands our issues. She shares our values. She listens to us. And she has always been there for working families throughout her career. And I remember at the Philadelphia convention when Bill Clinton was speaking about Hillary's career, and he gave this compelling, did anybody watch it? Compelling speech. And afterward, I could not tell you how many people I talked to that said, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that side of her, or I didn't know she did that. As a young activist and a lawyer, Hillary fought to make life better for women and families. As First Lady, she led the charge for quality, affordable health care. As a senator, she stood up for our first responders and helped upstate New York's manufacturing base get back on its feet. Not a lot of people know that she started the manufacturing caucus in the U.S. Senate. As Secretary of State, she repaired our image that was totally destroyed by the previous administration abroad and spoke out for civil, human, and women's rights. And at the same time, Donald Trump was talking about, have you seen this quote? That he would get upset when he would come home and dinner wasn't on the table. She was saying women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights at that very moment. So what a contrast between these two candidates. Hillary believes in a fair day's pay for a hard day's work. And she's not afraid to say the U word. That's union. Are you with me? She is a proud supporter of unions, and she has a detailed plan to create jobs and raise wages and promote what some people call work-life balance. I call work-life fit because it's very tricky to try to balance that. And she strongly opposes the TPP and has called for an entirely new direction on trade. Bernie Sanders supports her. Tammy Baldwin supports her. Barack Obama supports her. The AFL-CIO supports her. And brothers and sisters, we are going to elect Hillary Clinton the next president of the United States. And what about her opponents? It's like constant fodder, right? Like every day you wake up and you're like, what's going to happen next? But have you ever seen a candidate like this? Have you seen a candidate like this in your life? Donald Trump has called women dogs, pigs. He actually remarked that putting a wife to work is a very dangerous thing. And just a few weeks ago, Trump suggested that women who face sexual harassment on the job should just find someplace else to work. Can you believe that? It's amazing. And women that we talk to in the real world, who face discrimination every day, don't have the option to just leave their jobs, Donald. And they shouldn't have to. They shouldn't have to. So Trump is not just unfit to be president. His policies would be, as he would say, a disaster. A disaster for working people. He doesn't just support right to work. He loves it, quote. He has repeatedly mistreated employees at his own company. He says wages are too high. He actually said that. And he, I think it's just a crazy version of Scott Walker with orange highlights. That's how I think it. And you can use that. Trump is actually fond of accusing Hillary Clinton of playing the quote-unquote woman card. I'm sure you've heard that one. Well, I'm a woman, and I have a card. And it's a card that means good wages and benefits and a voice on the job, and it stands for solidarity, and it stands for unity, and it guarantees a safe workplace and a secure retirement. And I'm talking not about my woman card, but about my union card. So the stakes are enormous. The stakes are just huge. I keep weaving in Donald, huge. So this year's election isn't just going to determine the presidency and the control of Congress and dozens of state legislatures. It's going to decide the balance of the Supreme Court. I know you're all aware of the stakes there. In addition to the vacancy left by Justice Scalia's passing, when the next president takes office, 2 justices will be more than 80 years old. So can you imagine what a Trump court would look like? Stop for a minute and think about that. What would it look like? On the other hand, think about how significant the addition of a progressive appointee would be in so many crucial areas, from workers' rights to civil rights to women's rights to the future of our democracy. A single justice can make all the difference, let alone 3 justices. So that's probably why the Senate is refusing to do its job right now. And for as long as I can remember, every Supreme Court nominee has at least gotten a hearing and gotten a vote. But just minutes after Justice Scalia passed away, Senate Republicans announced they wouldn't consider anyone President Obama put forward. No hearings, no vote, no nothing. And one of the ringleaders of that obstruction was Johnson, Senator Ron Johnson, in addition to, many others. And so Johnson would rather leave a Supreme Court seat vacant than carry out his constitutional obligation, all because the president happens to be a Democrat. It's shameful. It's shameful. So the labor movement, though, we know how to get things done. And from the State House, whether it's your State House here in Wisconsin, all the way up to the White House, we are going to make the difference in this election. And the next one. And the next one after that, right? And we're going to talk to our members, we're going to talk to neighbors and family and friends, and we're going to reach out to union members and young people and women and communities of color, and we're going to register new voters, and we're going to hit the polls like never before. And together we're going to move this country forward, aren't we? Yeah. I didn't hear you. We're going to move this country forward. Yeah. Right. Forward with Hillary Clinton as our president and Tim Kaine as our vice president. Forward with Russ Feingold back in the Senate and Ron Johnson back in the private sector. Forward with pro-worker Congress and a forward-looking Supreme Court. And absolutely forward with leaders in Madison who hear our voices and respect our rights. And by the way, we're going to finish the job on Scott Walker in 2018.